Okay, here's a review over factoring and quadratic equations. Now we've taken this one time and I've added some things to it, and you get this, you can use this, and then multiplication table. Now I've added graphs to it, and what you need to do with a graph is you have to keep your eye peeled and see if x, your variable, independent variables to the second power, and it is, so it's going to be a parabola. Okay, it's going to go like this because we have positive. And it's in standard form because there's no parentheses. So on these parabolas, we always need 3 points if we're going to graph an accurate depiction of what the function looks like. So on standard form, to find the center point, the vertex, you have an A, you have a B. Okay? Because you need those two things. And finding the vertex is the opposite of B. I'll do it up here. Opposite of B divided by 2 multiplied by A. It's like finding the vertex. So the opposite of negative 12 is 12. And then I multiply 2 by 2. And we know 2 times 2 is 4, and then I divide 12 by 4, and that's 3. So my vertex x-coordinate's 3, and then the two integers that's between is 2 and 4. Now, that's the hard part. Now, getting your dependent values is very easy. You just insert those in for the x. So you got 2, and you're going to insert a 2 to the second power, and then minus 12, and then 2, and then add 2. That's negative 14. Okay, now I simply use the up key on my compass and just replace those parentheses 2's with 3's, so I don't have to keep re-entering it. That's negative 16. And I hit the up key and replace my 3's with 4's. Okay, and that's back to so I know I did this correctly because the outers y's end up the same. So we need to go by 2's on the y-axis for those values. So 2, you go right 2, down 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. I don't need the coordinate labeled. Okay. 3, negative 16, so 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And then 4, negative 14, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, or 14. Might have to get that out of there. And there's your parabola, okay? So again, the second power means I have a parabola. It's going to look like that when we have a positive in front. And no parentheses is standard form, so there's got to be the A, the opposite of B divided by 2A. Okay, now my independent variable here is also to the second power, but we have a negative in front, so it's a parabola, and it's going to look like that, okay? But there's a parentheses, there's one parentheses, and the contents within the expression within that parentheses is to the second power. It's squared. So that means that's in vertex form. Okay, that's the vertex. That's a form I just wrote down. So again, we need the 3 points, but the way I come up with the vertex is much different. We take the expression within the parentheses, x plus 2, and set that equal to 0. So I have to find the x value that would make that equal to 0, which is not hard. You just subtract 2, and I get negative 2. Okay. So negative 2 is the vertex. Okay. It's called vertex form because a vertex takes 2 seconds to find. And that would be on a number line, that would be between the integers negative 1 and negative 3. Okay, and then I just plug those in. So negative 3, parentheses, and then we're going to go negative 1 plus 2, close it. And that's going to be to the second power. And then add 6, and that's 3. Then I hit the up key, and now instead of negative 1 plus 2, we're going to go negative 2 plus 2, and that's 6. And then negative 3, and then I'm back to 3, so I just graph those. So I go left 1, up 1, 2, 3. Negative 2, 6, so I go left 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then negative 3, 3. And there's my parabola. Again, it's this time it's upside down because we had a negative coefficient in front. Okay, now the next one, a lot of people don't see that you do have a second power because you got two x's right there. So that again is a parabola. It's going to turn this way because we have a positive in the front. But this time there's two parentheses, each one containing an x variable, so this is known as factored form. Okay, so with factored form I put a 0 here, and then F1, F2, because remember when you factor you want the 0 there, you're set, and you're already factored, so you just set x minus 1 equal to 0 and x plus 3 equal to 0. So I add 1 to both sides, and that's 1. And then I subtract 3 from both sides, and that's negative 3. Now those two input values are the zeros of the function, okay? So positive 1 and negative 3. And you can plug them into your calculator, but they're going to give you 0 for an output. Now to find the actual vertex, because what you need to find the average of these, so you just find the sum by adding, which is negative 2, and then divide by how many numbers you added, which is 2, and that's negative 1. Okay, you can plug those in, so you go 4, parentheses 1 minus 1, close it, and then 1 plus 3, or no, negative 1, you have 4, negative 1 minus 1, negative 1 plus 3, and I come up with negative 16. So again, we'll have to make everyone work 2. Okay, you go left 1 down 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And there's my parabola. Factored forms tend to be wider when you sketch them. Okay, now this time there's no way I have a second power, so it's a line. Now, a line can take place in either two forms that we've talked about. There's slope, intercept, and there's standard. Well, the y is by itself, and the operations are all happening to the x, so that means it's in slope, intercept form, y-intercept. So my slope's negative 3 over 1, and then positive 2 is my y-intercept. So I go up 2. Then from that point, I go down 3, right 1. And you can do that again. And just make the line as straight as you can. We don't really need a ruler. That's how that behaves right there. Okay, now we get into solving equations. Now, first thing when we solve an equation, we need to know how many answers we're trying to find. There would be 2. Now I got to decide if I have to factor or if I can just get the x by itself, okay? So we know we got x second now as my highest. Now the question is, do you have x? Yep, you do. So when you have those two things, you're going to have to factor, okay? So you're set. Now you got to count the number of terms. You have 2, so that's GCF DOPS. Okay, remember on GCF, 3 things we check for: the negative, the x, the GCF. Well, I'm not going to need a negative. X, yeah, I am going to need x because they both have x. Take the x on the final line. Okay, and then the GCF out of 3 and 12, you can clearly see those are both in the row of 3, so it's the greatest common factor. So I factor out a 3x. And then I go divide by 3x. And remember, when we're dividing by x, the x's cancel on the last division. And that'll give me 1. Remember, that x goes away, and that goes down 1 to just an x, and then minus 4. Now, a lot of people would think that's a difference of perfect squares, but it's not because your x isn't to the second power, so it can't be. So I put equals 0, and that's my F1. My F2. Now, if that was to the second power, I'd go x, x, and then 1, 1, and then 2, 2, but it wasn't. So 3 times x could equal 0, or the possibility that 1x minus 4 could equal 0. So I divide by 3, and that's 0. Then I add 4, which is 4. You don't need to divide by 1. It's 0 and 4 are the two solutions to the equation. Okay, number 6, we have x to the power of 2 minus 9x plus 18 equals 0. So there's two solutions to that equation because you know you got x to the second. Now, do you have x? You do, okay? So again, with those two things, we're going to have to factor because we got both of them. So make sure you're set. You are. You got 3 terms here, so that would be looking for the greatest common factor and then going to my table. Okay, greatest common factor, negative x GCF. Okay, well, there's no negative in front. That's for 1, and the next thing, I'm not going to need x, okay? X dying, dang it. And then 1, 9, and 18 would just be 1. So if that's all I can find, I'm not going to end up doing that here. I'm going to get something else to write with. That is dying. Okay. All right, so actually here this will work. Okay, so we delete that, and that one's dead too. We're going to have to use a pencil. Okay, so A, B, C. Or okay, so we can delete that, and then 1 times 18 is 18. So that would be an adding problem trying to come to 9. Remember, 9's negative. 1 and 18 can't accomplish that. 2 and 9, that'd be 11. But if you divide 18 by 3, you get 6. So I think that can add to 9. Now remember, the 9's negative, so you need a higher negative. And then having a positive up there means the signs have to be the same. Okay, now what is your A? You got to pay attention what the A is. The A is 1x to the second. So if it's 1x to the second, you can ditch the 1 and just rewrite that in factored form as x minus 3 and x minus 6. Okay, there's no GCF, so F1, F2. And the two solutions are simply 3 and 6 because you just end up adding those to both sides. So plus 3, you get 3, and then the other one's just 6. Okay, number 7, 5x to the second power minus 8x minus 4 equals 0. So there's two answers because you have x to the second. Now, do you have x? Yep, we do. So with those two things, we're going to have to use factor. Okay. So you're set. Okay. Now, count the terms. You're going to attempt to rewrite this in factored form. There's 3 answers. So GCF-T. Okay, GCF, 3 things, negative x and the GCF. Well, we don't need a negative. We don't need x because 4 doesn't have it. Okay, 5, 8, and 4, if you want to use your chart. I don't think you can find anything but 1. I think that's the only part 1 where they all 3 appear. So ditch it. So I take 5 times negative 4. That'd be negative 20. So that would be a minus trying to get to 8, which is negative. 1 and 20 can't do that. That's 19. 2 and 10. Okay, that does it. Remember, they got to make negative 8, so you need negative 10 for sure. And you have a negative product, so the signs have to be the opposite. Now keep your eye peeled for what the A is. Now the A is 5x a second. Now if it's not a 1, you can't just ditch it. So to rewrite this in factored form, you need to use 2 sets of parentheses, starting with your 5x plus 2 and 5x minus 10. Don't write those x's to the second power, okay? So 5 and 2, those only appear in the row of 1, so that would stay 5x plus 2. 5 and 10 both appear in the row of 5, so we would divide those by 5, and that would be 1x or x minus 2. Okay, and there's no GCF, so I have written this correctly in factored form. So 5x plus 2 could equal 0, or 1x minus 2 could equal 0. So you subtract 2, and that gives me negative 2, but then I have to divide by 5. Now, since that's a decimal, we're just going to keep that in fraction form, negative 2/5. If you want to write the decimal, that's fine too. Now, over here you add 2, and you don't need 2 divided by 1, still 2. Okay, number 8. There's 2 solutions to the problem. Now, you have x second. Do you have x? I don't think you do. So, you're not going to factor this. You're going to get x to the second by itself. You're not going to factor. There's what I see people do. They subtract the 22. No, that's how you set an equation for it to be factored. Just forget that. You had to get the x by itself. First, you undo minus and plus. You got a minus 2, so you'd want to add 2. Remember, 22 doesn't have any operations to the x. So that equals 24. Now, what else do you got? Cover up the other side with your hand if you have to, so you're not tempted to mess around over there. That's how you set it. You don't need to set this. You're not factoring it. You're to get x squared by itself. Okay, then divide by 3. And x to the second power equals 8. Now you're thinking, well, I don't know. There's no number times itself that can give you exactly 8. So it's going to be an irrational answer. So you simply find the square root of 8 on your calculator. Okay, and that'd be 2.83 and negative 2.83. That's all you do. Okay, next one. 7x to the second power plus 10x plus 2 equals 0. So we have 2 solutions to the problem. Now you got x to the second. Do you have x? Yep, you do. So you got to factor it. And you are set. That's good. And we have 3 terms we're going to attempt to rewrite in factored form so I can find the solutions to the equation. Okay, negative x GCF. Well, we ain't going to need the negative. You can't do the x because 2, 7, 10, and 2. Again, use your multiplication table. You just see them in the row of 1. Okay, so 7 times 2 is 14. It's positive, so that's an add trying to get to 10, which is positive. 1 and 14 is 15. That doesn't work. 14 divided by 2 is 7. Now that's 9. That's already smaller than 10, so that means this is an irrational. So you use your quadratic formula. Opposite of b, plus or minus d square root. B squared minus 4ac, B squared minus 4ac over 2a, over 2a. Okay, so A is 7, B is 10, C is 2. So the opposite of B would be negative 10. And we have our B, B is 10. 4a is 7, C is 2. And then A here is 7. Okay, so I have the plus minus. Now in front of that we have negative 10. Now bottom 2 times 7 is 14. Okay, now I go to a calculator. You need 2 parentheses at the beginning of the square root though, because one parentheses pops up and then you need a second one to just close up the 10. Then second power, you can just hit that key. You can go this 2 or you can just hit that key. It don't matter. Minus 4, 7, and 2. I got 6.63. Okay, so I take negative 10 plus 6.63 equals, and then divide that by 14, and I get negative 0.24. Again, these are rational, so they go on forever. then negative 10 minus 6.63 divided by 14 is negative 1.19. Okay. All right, number 10. Now, there are no powers here, so there's just one answer because I have just x, no powers. So, again, I do the by itself thing. Okay, now to get an x by itself, you can't have two different x's, so you need to eliminate one. Doesn't matter which one. Okay, 3x minus 2x is 1x. And then again, we're just looking at undoing the operations around the x. So I add 2. That's 1x equals 10. And then you'd just be at 10. Okay. That's going to come off. Okay. So those ones where you have, where your x's are like terms, you get the x by itself. Okay, number 11, we have x to the power of 3 minus 5x to the power of 2 minus 9x plus 45 equals 0. So I have 3 solutions this time. Now, if you have a third power, it's possible you can get x to the third by itself, but I really can't because I also have x to the second and x. So again, you got to factor. Okay, so you're set. That's good. How many terms are we factoring? Looks like 4, so that's grouping and dots. We know how to set up dots. Grouping again, plus, and then same thing with the line out front. And first line's easy. We just put the 1x to the third minus the 5x to the second, and then the negative 9x plus the 45. Now we're looking at just 2 and 2 here, 2 here. So again, we look for the negative, the x, and the GCF. Okay, we don't need the negative here. We are going to need it here, though. And x, we're going to need x here. We need it to the second power because that's on the final line. We don't put x here. Okay, so 1 and 5 is 1. You can put the 1. You don't really have to, but you can do it. And then 9 and 45, I can see clearly that those are both in 9's row. Okay, so I factor out 1x to the second here, and then negative 9 here. So what do I have left? Well, 1 divided by 1 is 1, and take that away, and that goes down to just x then. Because you're taking 2 away from 3, makes it x. Those cancel completely. And this will be the same thing, because negative 9 divided by negative 9 is 1 with x. 45 divided by negative 9 is negative 5. Okay, so within each parentheses, we have the exact same expression. So we put that out here. And that ends up being my F1. Okay, you have 1x to the second minus 9. Okay, now we look here. We have x to the second, so that we know that's x times x. 1 would be 1 times 1, and 9 would be 3 times 3. Okay, you want to drop that 1x minus 5 down, and I have successfully rewritten this expression in 3 factors. F1, F2, F3. So 1x minus 5 equals 0. 1x plus 3 equals 0, or minus 3 could equal 0. So I add 5, that's 5, don't need to divide by 1. I mean, you can if that floats your boat. Negative 3 and positive 3. Okay, now the parentheses. This only has one answer, and the distribution is not blocked, so just easy. 5x plus 10 equals 30, and you just undo the operations with the x. So you minus 10, that gives you 20, and then divide by 5, and x equals 4. Okay, now this one right here, there'd be 2 answers, and you can't distribute because the exponent blocks the distribution. So you need to rewrite that without a parentheses. Just replace your parentheses with the variable q. 3q to the second power equals 48. And then I need a table so that once I get my q variable solved for, I bring back my expression x minus 4. Okay, now you simply undo the operations around the q. You don't have to add or subtract. You can just divide by 3. So q to the second, 48 divided by 3 is 16. And then some of you know what number times itself is 16. It's 4, because if you find the square root of 16, because that's how you undo a second power, that's 4. So you could be equal to 4 or negative 4. And then you undo plus 4, and that's 8. 4 plus 4 is. Then you add 4, and negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So I came up with the two solutions that would make that true. Okay, problem solving. An object is thrown upward from a height of 15 feet with a velocity of 35 feet per second. How long does it take our object to reach a height of 0 feet? So you're not asking for the maximum, so we want to decide. We're going to have to do a little more analysis, okay? Because we got feet in seconds, x is seconds, y is feet. So feet per second is 35. Okay, now we start from 15 feet. So I've dealt with that, and we're going to land at, and then 0 feet's all the way down here, okay, 0 feet. So I line up my equation, my gravity equation, and we know we have negative 16, we got 35, and our starting height is 15. Now, this is my input number, 0 feet. Now it's feet, so it goes in for y. Okay, so let's ditch the y and just put 0. So what variable is now the only variable I have in the equation that I need to solve for? X. Well, there's a power, because you got x second and you've also got x, so you need to do the factoring. Okay, so you're set. That's a good thing. So 3 terms, that would be GCF and the table. GCF negative x GCF. Well, we're going to need the negative because the first term's negative. X we don't need because 15 doesn't have it. Then 16, 15, 35. Now you know how to factorize a 16. It's 1/16, 2, 8, and 3 is a decimal, and then double 4s. Well, obviously you can't divide them all by 16. You can't divide all these by 8. You can't divide them all by 4, and they're not all even, so you can't divide them by 2. So you have to roll with 1 then. But since it's negative 1, I actually go through with this process. Okay. So it gives me positive 16x to the second minus 35x minus 15. Okay, so I take 16 times negative 15. Negative 240, we have a new rule in here, okay? Anytime we get a product, when the AC product's higher than 200, okay, just don't bother with the table and set up your quadratic formula. Okay, so opposite of b, b squared minus 4a and c, and then 2 and a. So a is 16, b is negative 35, c is negative 15. Okay, so the opposite of b is 35. Ditch the b for a negative 35. You got 4, ditch the a for 16, ditch the c for negative 15, and ditch the a here for 16. So on the plus minus, we got a 35 in front, and 2 times 16 is 32. So in the denominator, we have 32. And then we figure out what that square root is. So second, and then fourth key up. Remember to parenthesize it twice. Then subtract a 4, 16, and a negative 15. Got 46.74. And the only thing that's left for me to do to get my two solutions is to add, hit equals, and divide. That gives me 2.55. And then subtract, hit equals, and divide. 2.55 is the answer I want to go with. Okay, two more. An object's thrown upward from a height of 15 feet with a velocity of 35. That's supposed to say per second. Sorry about that. Per second. Find the maximum. Okay, how do I find a maximum? Well, first off, I just draw a parabola in the center. I don't need to do a lot of analyzing of the units. And to find the x, it's always opposite of b divided by 2 times a. Now, we're talking gravity here, so I can go straight to my equation. Okay, I'm not going to have to rewrite this equation. I'm going to know a and b instantly. Negative 16. 35 feet per second, and we began at 15. And now I have a and b pretty well cut and dry. So the opposite of the b would be negative 35, and then I take 2 multiplied by negative 16, 2 times a. So that's negative 32. And I just find that quotient. Remember, top divided by bottom, 1.09. Now, to calculate the approximate y-coordinate, we replace those x's with 1.09. And y is just screaming to be solved for with a calculator. Okay, and 34.14, and that is the maximum height. So again, x is the seconds it took to get to that, and then 34.14 is your height. Okay, and our final problem. Remember, a maximum height, you don't draw boxes or any of that stuff, okay? A video store sells 150 DVDs a week at a price of $20 each. The owner's going to estimate that for each $1 decrease in price, 25 more DVDs will be sold. That means if he goes down to $19, he's going to sell 175. $18 would be 200, okay? And so forth. How many price decreases before the store can maximize revenue, and what will that maximum revenue be? So again, we're talking maximum. And again, I always know to find the x coordinate, I can rely on the opposite of b divided by 2 times a. But this isn't gravity. This is business. And making money, revenue, is simply taking the money I charge times how many items we have. Okay? So find your money quantities, 20 and 1. Those both go in this parentheses. So I go 20. Remember, you don't put an X on that. That's the beginning amount. And then $1 decrease is minus 1. Now that's happening repeatedly, and I don't know how many times to do that, so X. Okay, how many items? Well, I was selling 150. That's my beginning amount. And 25 more. And that happens every time I decrease by $1, so I need an X on that. Now, I'd love to have B and A, but I can't. I have to eliminate these parentheses. So the R is replaced with Y, and I need to execute the FOIL method up here. So I take 20, distribute that, times 150, and times 25X. Okay? And then negative 1X, and times the same two fact terms. Okay, then what do we have here? Well, this is 3,000. I'll just put that right there. That's 500x. Here, I'll just circle them so you can see how I'm getting them. This is negative 150 with x. And that's negative 25 with x to the second. Okay. So x, I got negative, and by the way, you want to write your lines out, because this is where our A is at, that's where our B is at, and as soon as I know those, I'm gold. So 500 plus -1, okay, so we got -25 for x to the second. For x, we combine those, and that's 350. Then we have 3,000. Okay, now I'm good. You just got to take it a step further. You got to multiply out the parentheses. See, on the one before, you don't have parentheses, and you know your A and B right away. This one you do. Okay, so the opposite of B is -350. Then I take 2 times -25. That's -50. You should always end up dividing a negative by a negative on a story problem where you're finding the maximum. That's 7. So I have went down by $1 7 times. Then I simply replace those x's with 7. And that gives me my maximum revenue. For $4,225. Okay, and that is your maximum revenue. That's what you want to put down there.